Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of 2025 of the Entrepreneurship Sucks podcast with Kevin and Josh. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. Listen, man, Joshua and I have been in sales for a combined 3 decades. We have an amazing sales coach currently, and we've been through all the highest level sales trainings from corporate to high ticket sales. You name the program, we've been in it. And I'll tell you, our guest today is whose content me and Joshua are DMing to each other on a daily basis lately. And that is no other than Mr. Josh Lyons. Josh, how you feeling today, man?
I'm always feeling great, guys. It's such a huge part of being in sales is bringing the right energy. So I'm ready to cook.
Love it.
Well,
yeah, and so go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, well, real quick before we dive into our first question for you, Josh, for the people that don't know who you are, and it's totally cool to flex, by the way, why don't you just real quick run through why everyone who does know who you are, like why they know that your jersey should be hanging in the Sales Hall of Fame with the greats?
Well, I don't think it should be next to the greats. It could be in a separate room. But yeah, in my opinion, there is a lot going wrong in the sales industry right now. And I'll give you 2 big high-level things that are going wrong. Number one is that sales has just become scripted conversations, which are boring as fuck, not very good for the prospect, and aren't going to allow you to become anything other than a parrot. Number 2 is that the idea of high-ticket closing is that working with a business owner, helping people transform their lives, you can get rich as fuck. And most people in the sales industry are now pushing this idea that 10K a month, 15K a month, 20K a month is perfectly fine, which it's not, because you have an opportunity to make so much more. And so everything I teach follows the opposite of both of those 2, what I would say, misalignments now in the high ticket industry. Number one is you got to have a real conversation, a no bullshit conversation, something that's genuine, something that's authentic, something that is transformational for the person on the end of the phone, the prospect. The second thing is that sales done right, not with a script, not with like small boy and small girl goals, but sales done right can be the vehicle for you to build the life of your dreams. And because I believe those 2 things so strongly, the students that align themselves with me and actually with my mentor as well, they're able to go on that path to become the best version of themselves and to build whatever is the life of their dreams. So I would say for those 2 reasons, the jersey should be hanging completely on its own.
Cool. Love it. To start things off, man, and that was amazing. We like to ask our guests pretty much the same question every time when people come on, right? Like, the name of our podcast, Entrepreneurship Sucks. It gets a different reaction from everybody we invite. So we like to just ask, like, what does Entrepreneurship Sucks mean to you?
To me, I think it means that anything worth doing is going to be frustrating in the moment many, many times. But through those frustrations, you have the opportunity to ascend, to become a better version of yourself, to acquire the material things that you want in your life. And really, the fundamental difference between entrepreneurs that succeed and people that don't, whether they're 9-to-5ers trying to be an entrepreneur or wannapreneur, or entrepreneurs that just never make it, is whether they're willing to go through those things that suck. And what's interesting about this platform is not only to go through the things that suck, but to have the locker room talks about them. In other words, it sucked so much 6 months ago when I was hitting this brick wall in my business and man, everything was crumbling down. But now we're just going to joke about it. Now we're just going to laugh about it. That constant movement of another challenge, frustration to get over it, and then laugh about it in the future, that's entrepreneurship. Like that's basically what it is.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the best answers I've gotten to that question. And that's, that really aligns with like the entire premise of like what we do here, right? Is, if the true testament of overcoming something, like I've been through a lot of tough shit in entrepreneurship and just in life, but the true testament that you've overcame it is that you can make light of it and you can just joke about it, because it feels like nothing once you've truly overcome it, right? Because you are different now, you are stronger, and you have the lessons and the values that came from it. So that's awesome.
I would take it 1 degree further. You said that, to laugh about it. I would say number one, to laugh about it, but number two, to be able to look at those things as the best things that happen to you. Because like you said at the end there, it's like, I've got the values, I've got the lessons, I've got the rewards of going through those things. They don't come separately. It's challenges, things that suck, going through them equals rewards. And being able to have that perspective as an entrepreneur is what allows you to be a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that the only thing worse than not, than going through the thing is not allowing you to defeat you and not turn you into the best version of yourself that could be from that. It's like Napoleon Hill had a quote: in every adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater opportunity. It's if and only if that you look for it, that you find it. So this is technically the first question we have for you specifically. And it's really funny because you made a reel about it this morning. And you said it was about a 1 call versus 2 call close and following up. And you said that the way to make big money from 1 call closes is to have an effective discovery process with scriptless selling, or else you're just going to continue following up and lose a bunch of deals and leave a bunch of money on the table. And the primary question I had around that, and I have 2 follow-up questions, was, is there any reality where a 2 call close makes sense, or is it almost always like an excuse for a lack of skill set on not being able to close on the first call?
So there's a difference between what a salesman has the capacity to do and what a business owner has the capacity to do. So let's just clarify that. So as a salesperson, you may be forced into a position where you have to 2 call close because the business owner, the sales manager, has put in place sales systems where they're not pre-qualifying certain things from the leads. There's no application form, et cetera, et cetera. So I had an example of one of my students recently where he's selling visa applications, so help you get a visa for certain countries, and doing a lot of legal work and stuff like that to make the administration easier. And on the first call, he is struggling to get all the actual technical data that he needs to know which visa they qualify before he even has time to get into the real discovery. Like, why do you want to do this? Why is that important? Why now? All of that. So he's forced into a position where he has to 2 call close. But what really should be happening is that before someone turns up to a sales call, all of that information should be gathered from either an application form, through a VSL that disqualifies people that wouldn't be aligned, or through a setter. So just to caveat my answer so that people don't come back and say, oh, well, what about this scenario? If you're not in that scenario and every lead that turns up to your live sales call is technically qualified, meaning there's no logical things that mean you need to figure out, do they actually qualify for the offer? Then every single call can be a 1 call close.
It's a great answer. It's beautiful. To follow up, obviously they both have their pros and cons. How do you determine when to go for 1 versus 2?
I don't agree that they have their pros and cons. I think the con is going for a 2 call close, because all you're doing is letting the prospect off the hook, removing the emotions that they should have started feeling from the discovery, giving them a massive amount of time to go away and rationalize and justify and make excuses and find every reason under the sun to procrastinate, which is what human beings do. That's the human condition. So I don't think there's any reason that you should ever 2 call close. Maybe I wasn't clear with my first answer. The only reason you need to 2 call close is if the sales process hasn't been designed in the right way, where the whole point of the discovery call is to dive deep into the person's life, what is going wrong, and what needs to happen to fix it. It's not supposed to be qualifying data about logistical reasons that someone is or isn't qualified. That can just be done with an application form. Under any circumstance, there's no reason to jump into a 2 call close. Like, you're on the call, you're getting the person motivated, you're getting them emotional. You ask them, how much longer do you want to live life like this? And if you don't hold their feet to the fire to make a change now, the likelihood that they come back is very, very slim.
I find that the holding of the feet to the fire is most salespeople I've spoken to and seen reviewed calls, whatever, they have a hard time holding their potential clients, their prospects and leads feet to the fire. And I definitely think it's more of like an ability to be comfortable and be silent while they're like cooking underneath the pressure of the decision that they need to make. And I've heard you talk a lot about how you can't be a pussy at the end of the day. You know, you really got to be
rich.
No, definitely not.
You know, we talked briefly about the name of the podcast. Something sucks. I have two options: go through it or don't go through it. If I go through it, I get the reward. If I don't go through it, I don't get the reward. It's the same in sales. You find the point on the sales call where there's resistance between you and the prospect. They don't want to face reality. You have a choice. Do you want to get your commission and help the person, or do you want to pussy out? And most people just pussy out. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, I didn't want to upset the prospect. I'll just do a follow-up. Well, if you don't have the ability or the balls to actually challenge them now, nothing's going to change on follow-up.
Love it.
So the con there, and that was a curveball there, Josh. It was really good. The con there is the 2-call close.
Exactly. There is no benefit of doing a 2-call close. The only reason you should do it is if you haven't found a way to gather upfront data using some other form of sales process, an application form, a disqualifying VSL, setters, you know, whatever. But you don't need a closer to do any of that.
That's a good point.
I mean, it's called a closer. It means you turn up to a call with me. If you're not, you know, misaligned for some reason, I'm going to close you. It's not a maybe closer. It's a closer. You will be closed if you're on the phone with me.
I think where, personally, just if I'm speaking about our process before I go into the next question, which is kind of relevant to what we're talking about now, it's like how much friction, I don't know if friction is the right word, but like in the application process, one thing that we've, you know, tested with and across a couple different companies that Kevin and I both worked for, all sales, you know, on sales teams, is like how much friction do I create in the pre-call process, like with the VSL and the application, and how many questions do I ask in the application. And so I'm kind of curious about your take on that, because it is pertinent to like the 1-call versus 2-call close, drawing the line with like unnecessary questions or unnecessary things that really don't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so holistic that it depends on a number of factors. So I'll give you a handful. If you're on an offer that's a volume offer, you know, you've got setters, you've got an infinite number of leads, you've got a massive sales team, you don't really want to be overly qualifying people. You want to just keep your volume. If you run a 1 or a 2 or a 3-man millions business where it's just like 2 or 3 of you that are running a business to make a good living and have a lifestyle business, then you want to be much more hardcore in your disqualifying, because you don't want to be talking to a number of people that are not qualified. So it's a combination of what logistics the business has and the personal goals of the business owner. Some business owners would rather make $1 million a year and have, 2 people they speak to a day. Other business owners would rather make $10 million a year, but have a sales team of 10 people, have a setter team of 5 people, have a bunch of other things. It's like, it's personal preference. The more you want to reduce your variance of the different things that you're doing in your business, the more hardcore you want to be disqualifying, is basically the bumper sticker. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. So it's like, it's really just based on the dynamic of the operation. At the end of the day, in sales, it never is one size fits all. It Correct. Definitely is. It definitely is different. Kevin, do you have any more on this topic before I go into the next thing?
No.
Cool. So, in keeping with like traditional things or like things that the traditional sales industry teaches, much like a one call versus a two call close, you're coming back to your point about hanging it on your jersey on a different section of what the greats would be hanging. You're notorious for replacing outdated sales practices. Like one call, two call closes. Well, replacing two call with one call. And you talk a lot about unselling clients, scriptless sales, not following up. And the old way of sales is hard closing, keeping people on the phone till they buy, relying on a script, endless follow up. And your philosophies are obviously very polarized to that. Can you explain simply like why or where that came from?
So I think a lot of the traditional, what we would call outdated sales philosophies were based on what was called the boiler room, which is like a room of salespeople. We're not in that era anymore where, Jordan Belfort is calling ticker tape people to buy penny stocks. Like that's not what we're selling. We're selling high ticket offers. If you want to sell private jets, private boats, if you want to sell $15,000 coaching packages and above, you don't sell those things by doing, you need to, have a minimum of 10 touch points before someone's going to buy. It's like, no. This is not that industry. This is, I'm speaking to a person. I've never met them in my life. I'm going to have a great conversation with them for an hour. And by the end of that hour, we've formed a bond that this is a win-win to work together, or we found out it's not. And that's it. It's not selling penny stocks and running a boiler room and doing cold calling to hundreds of thousands of leads a month. So it's just different. But what people are misunderstanding is they're trying to take principles that were from one subdivision of the sales industry and bring them into a completely different subdivision. It's like in the past, if you wanted a computer, you had to write your own code for the computer. 99.999% of people don't write code for their computer anymore. So if you went to Apple, and Apple, when you walk into the Apple shop, they have the Apple training, little box. They were like, right, we're doing computer coding today. People are like, why the fuck are we learning computer coding? I don't need to know that. But people could argue, oh, well, it's still computers. It's like, it's such a different subdivision of computers, just like sales is not sales. It's cold calling, high ticket closing, boiler room, high ticket closing. Like there's all sorts of different variations of sales. Now, there are underlying principles that I think run throughout those, which is having an authentic conversation, showing up with the right energy. I think if it's right for the person, you should try and close them on the one call. But there are a lot of other philosophies like, 7 follow-ups and, 2 call closes, which are just from a different industry. And I think people, what I've noticed, this podcast called Entrepreneurship. So it's kind of like, well, is high ticket closing entrepreneurship? Yes, because you're working for yourself. You're commission owner. You're making your own money. I think one of the big things that's wrong with most high ticket closers that robs them of making more money is they still think like a 9-to-5er. They want someone else to do the thinking for them. It's like, oh, well, I saw on a YouTube video that I should be following up with people 7 times. It's like, who made the video? Oh, some like guy from 1980. So have you not noticed that life has changed just a little bit since 1980? So they just don't think about the big picture. You've got to have critical thinking skills if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur and as a salesman.
Yeah, love it. Can you think of an example of maybe a student of yours that came from, that traditional, whether it be, other sales trainers or, big people in the industry where that was their, their form of learning the sales process and what was it like to help them unlearn that? And what were some of like the hardest things for them to overcome to actually get to a next level of success with what you taught them?
So one of the biggest differences is selling with a script or selling without a script. A lot of people come to me that have been trained to sell with a script. you asked me what is like the challenges of like moving them over to the new way of selling, or in my opinion, a way more effective way. I'll be honest with you, there isn't any psychological challenges because people don't come to me unless they're sick and tired of the results that they're getting with using a script. So they come to me because they're like, I'm not making the money that I want to make. I'm bored out of my brain selling. I'm not developing as a human being when I just turn up every day and read my script. It doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel authentic. So they come to me when they've had those realizations and they're like, you know what? Clearly something needs to change. So psychologically, there's no like me trying to convince them that they need to make this shift. They've already realized it's time for a change. Now, tactically, as we were talking about being a pussy or not being a pussy, tactically, the biggest thing that happens is when they get a little bit stuck on a sales call, they revert back to their, comfort zone, which is, oh, well, I know a scripted question that I could ask now. And they go back to deploying a scripted question. Now, that obviously doesn't work because you're on a sales call, you're having a genuine conversation, and then you switch into robot mode and you sell like you sound like a robot and you use some scripted question. But the biggest thing that I have to train them on is that you actually know what to say, you just aren't saying it. And so the easiest way that I train this is when we're doing a call review, I'll ask the number of students on the training, what are you thinking right now? Not what do you want to say. What are you thinking? What are you thinking about the prospect? What are you thinking about the situation? And they'll say something. They might say, oh, I think the prospect's being a pussy. And I say, okay, so why don't you just say that to the prospect? And they're like, oh, I guess I could just basically tell them what I'm already thinking. Now, obviously, you have to be a little bit more calibrated. You want to tone it down a little bit, but they'll be seeing something in the sales interaction and thinking what they're genuinely thinking, but then their brain goes somewhere else like, oh, I need to do my sales script. So no, the whole point is to be tuned into the prospect and speak your mind and trust your intuition. The more that I get sales reps to practice this, the more they start trusting their intuition. And they're like, I know what I'm thinking. I know what I'm feeling. Therefore, I know what question to ask. Because whatever you're thinking, you just ask it as a question. So, I wouldn't say, hey, Mr. Prospect, you're being a pussy. I would say, do you think you're maybe, to be blunt, being a bit of a pussy about this? And then it's like, it's just a question. But I'm just saying what I was thinking anyway. Just being a bit more calibrated. So the only challenge is getting closers to trust themselves more. And, one of my favorite quotes / poems / phrases comes from a movie called Coach Carter. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie. And there's a scene in it where they recite this poem and he says, it's not our darkness that most frightens us. It's actually our light. In other words, it's not feeling that we don't know what to do that scares us the most. It's actually stepping into the realization that you're actually more competent than you really realize you are. And a big part of my sales training is teaching closers, like, if you ditch the script, if you ditch all of your handicaps and all of your crutches and all the things that you're relying on, you'll actually realize that as a man or a woman, you're much more competent than you really thought you were. And for most of the closers, that's one of the biggest transformations that they get to experience is they start actually trusting themselves and having real confidence.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've been in sales since I was 17. I just turned 40. And the top performance every single time where I was top performer was when I just had the autonomy and the freedom to be completely myself and be present with the sales process. And every time I've ever worked for a company, I didn't stay long if I had to stick to a script because I was like, no, I'm not doing this handicap training wheels stuff. Gotta go.
Right.
So totally can relate.
Yeah, I remember the first time that we were working on the sales team together and you were like, bro, fuck this script. I cannot.
Yeah.
He's like, it's just not me. I feel like I'm being cornered into something that is not aligned with how I communicate.
You know, I don't care who wrote it. I don't care how many millions of dollars the person has sold. And no disrespect even to, you know, a great friend of ours who was a consultant at the time for that company. And he was helping me write the script. And as we're in Zoom, like writing the script, I'm like, you know, I'm not going to fucking use this, right? He's like, yeah, let's just go through the motions. So
just let me do what I was paid to do for your company.
Yeah. And then we'd really actually dig into the stuff that was going to help me close better. Yeah. And, you know, we'll show that we worked on the script, but that's not what's going to help me close more. So, So awesome.
Well, you know, continuing to progress like into like what's happening outside of what you teach, to like in the sales industry as a whole, AI, you know, one of the things we really wanted to talk about and hear your opinion on was AI. And, you know, that's our industry. That's what we do. And like Kevin just mentioned, and whenever we were introing you, like combined, we've got like 30 years plus in sales. And obviously AI is extremely new and everyone is trying to use it. But I feel like 90% or more of people are using it incorrectly because they don't understand the principles of sales, which is something that you just mentioned. Across the board, there's principle level things that apply, psychology, stuff like that. And we're a big believer that just because AI is here now doesn't mean that we get to neglect those fundamental principle level things as it pertains to AI in sales. And so I was kind of curious how you feel about AI in your sales process right now.
You might want to write this one down. AI is going to be a solution for everything that people don't want. AI is not going to be a solution for things that people do want. So every time you're doing something, you go, fuck, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be doing that research. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be doing that. AI will grow into a place where it can solve that. AI is not going to remove the things that you want to be doing just because it's more efficient. So I'll give an example. People, when they are considering buying an expensive thing, they don't think in their mind, the prospect, I don't want to talk to a human being. They don't think that. They think, I want to talk to a human being. I want to actually speak to a real person that I can connect with and see if I want to buy this thing. Otherwise, they would just use a payment link. So AI is not going to replace the things that people don't want to get rid of, but it's going to replace everything that people are like, I don't want to be doing all of that BS. So I don't think AI is ever going to replace the desire in the specific industries and the specific niches for prospects to want to talk to a human being. No matter how good the AI gets at the right questions, the right responses, the right tonality, if people want to speak to a human being, no matter how good AI is, it's not going to replace the desire to want to speak to a real human being. So it's really that simple. You know, like, you know, Elon Musk little memes go around all the time of Elon Musk and his robot girlfriend. It's like, do people want to go on a date with a robot? I don't think so. I think people want human connection. So AI is not going to replace human connection, but AI is going to replace everything that people are like, I just don't want to be doing that. Which kind of ties back to the underlying premise of this show is like, what happens to human beings and their progress as a human if they no longer have to do anything that they don't want to do? In other words, what would entrepreneurship sucks actually be if we removed the doing things that suck? Are you an entrepreneur then? Are you an entrepreneur if you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do? I don't know. Maybe you're just living in Disneyland. Like, you know, it's kind of a interesting rabbit hole of like the whole point of being an entrepreneur is to force yourself to go through the slog of the things that you don't want to do. If AI just replaced all of those things, then what happens to the brand of entrepreneurship? Where does it end up? You know, which is an interesting.
That is definitely an interesting rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have like so many different angles to go on that, but I don't know how deep that rabbit hole we're going to go down on this first podcast. We might have to have another one just talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the real question is that I have specifically is how can it be done right? You know, there's obviously And just for some context here, our whole slogan with what we sell to our clients is we're not trying to replace all the people. Kevin doesn't like me saying humans. Feels inhumane. That we're not trying to replace all the people in your sales team. We're just the things that they don't want to do that are actually they're having to do that are costing the company money, like leads falling through the cracks, no speed to lead, no automated follow up that's like contextually relevant to the leads point up into that point in the sales process, and then they're having to focus on doing all these things and try to focus on the new leads that are coming in that are hot, and then so that there's actually like revenue being lost. Like that's not something like, yeah, definitely a salesperson doesn't want to do those things. I mean, I definitely not. And there's upside, but I still believe that, like it's enabling salespeople and closers to focus on stuff like, that you teach, like being present with your prospects more. If you don't have to worry about following up with 100 leads later in the day, then you get to be have more bandwidth for the person sitting in front of you. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the angle that we've built our business on up in the past year that we've been doing this.
Yep. An interesting thing that comes to mind is, I don't remember which movie it is. I think it's like Iron Man 3. It's one of the Iron Mans. It's not the first one. And it's where like Iron Man has now transitioned from like the one Tony Stark to this army of fucking Iron Men. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there comes a point where it's like, you actually want the Tony Stark wearing the suit because it's a human being inside the suit, and the suit is augmenting his abilities. What you don't want is just these robot Iron Men that there's no human being inside of them. So like when you're talking about using AI, I view it as, I am a salesman. I'm going to have a real conversation with a real human being. I want all of the facilities around me that allow me to focus on that thing, so I don't have to do all of the tertiary things around it. So it's like, Tony Stark uses the Iron Man suit to be able to fly, to be able to navigate, to be able to, think through problems because he's got fucking Pepper or whatever it is. I don't remember the name of the AI, but the thing inside the suit.
Jarvis.
And Jarvis. That's the one. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Pepper is the girlfriend.
Yeah, it's not the girlfriend. And it's like I'm almost view it as the ideal for a salesperson would be the equivalent of a suit, not a physical suit, but like a suite of tools that you're able to use as you do your job being to have a human-to-human interaction. Like, I don't want to have to be inputting the leads into a CRM. I just want to be able to get to the end of my sales call and press a button and record a memo, say, this lead was 23 years old, blah, 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 had this problem, had that problem, didn't buy for this reason. And it will automatically put all of that into a CRM. Mm-hmm. Like, to be able to do the human bit, which is interpreting what happened in the conversation, and then use AI to pull that data out of the human being, out of the salesperson, and then, curate that data and analyze that data and do all of that. But yeah, that's kind of how I view it being in an ideal scenario. I don't know how far away we are from that.
I like that. I'm definitely stealing that analogy, by the way.
Yeah, tell salespeople that they're going to get their own Iron Man suit. I think that will sell pretty well.
Just start seeing ads for that one.
That would actually be a really, really, really good name for a CRM that has AI integrated into it that is to be used by closers. Call it Iron Man. That'd be such a sick name. Although you probably can't use that because it's probably trademarked. Yeah. Whatever, as close as you can get to something like that. Yeah.
People are going trigger happy with trademark stuff.
That's true.
Yeah, but the concept and using that as like an analogy on a call to help somebody conceptualize what we're doing here, because you've seen the headlines like AI is going to steal everybody's jobs and stuff like that, and it can't, especially with sales. It just cannot.
Yeah. I mean, perfect example is one of our clients is like $150 million a year company. They're alternative business lender. When they came to us, they were going to hire like 30 to 50 more people because they had like 500,000 leads that were just kind of sitting in their database. Like if people weren't converting, basically on their own before they like converting through the sales process to get in front of a salesperson, then they were just thrown in a pile, right? And that happened for like a good 3 years. And so, but instead of bringing on 30 to 50 more people to manage 1 to 3 year old leads, we're like, why don't we just prop up an AI system to create more opportunities for your existing 55 person sales team? Doesn't that make more sense?
Right.
And then once you're a $300 million company, then we can talk about bringing on expanding your sales force.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny. I mean, it almost happened accidentally, but that's why the name of our company is Leverage AI, right? Like you need that leverage, especially at that level.
Yeah.
Love it. So, his answer pretty much aligned with our philosophy, which is good. I was hoping that he wasn't going to completely crush everything that we've built our business on. So love it.
Yeah. Josh Lyons crushes our business model live. Hear it.
Yeah, right. At least the episode would get a lot of views.
That's right. That's very funny.
All right, cool. So, to kind of shift gears a little bit though, there's a lot of things that, Joshua and I, wanted to touch on with you, because there's so many interesting elements of like your philosophies and everything. But one thing that you've said about your leap from like a $1,500 a month to $100,000 a month commission closer was, it was more about unlearning rather than learning. What's the number one thing that you fought the hardest to unlearn to break through the next level?
In regards to sales, I think trying to be intelligent. When I was young, I think like a lot of young males, we like to learn things so that we then sound intelligent. Oh, I read a book on this and it told me to do this, and now I'm super intelligent. And one of the biggest things in progressing in life, and especially in sales, is you have to kind of act dumb, especially when you're on a sales call. Like trying to be the expert on the sales call that tells the prospect what the problem is and how they need to solve it, you're just going to lose the sale. And it's like when you're looking at yourself as a closer and you're looking at where you're losing money and you're not progressing, you have to look at yourself and be like, I'm not as smart as I thought I am. I'm not as good as I thought I am, or I would already be a millionaire. And it's like going from being intelligent, thinking that you know everything, to actually, you know what, I actually got everything wrong. I didn't actually know anything at all. If I kind of look back to when I was 25 and I just was getting into sales, I thought I was super intelligent. I thought I knew a lot about a lot of different things. And then now at 31, I'm like, you know what? I don't know much about nothing. It's like that change in perspective of like, I really am so low in the scale of understanding everything. And the irony is that the more you go down the scale of the amount that I still have left to learn is massive, the more money you actually make. The more you're at the top of the scale, psychologically thinking, I know everything. I've got everything figured out. You're not going to make much money if you're of that mindset.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big unlearning process of like, you know what? I have to basically go back to the drawing board and start from zero.
Yeah. And it's such a as within, so without thing, right? Because that applies directly to, if you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to get into a higher level room. Or, if you feel like you've learned everything you can learn from your coach or mentor, it's time to act as if you know less, and maybe you can learn more. It's interesting, the balance.
There's a quote, something like, it's like, if you think you are smart, then you're actually the dumbest person. So, something like that, to paraphrase it, something like that. Yeah. So if you think that you're smart, then you need to watch out. Like, you're probably actually really dumb.
Yeah.
I think it goes also, to take it a little deeper, it's very reflective of, how do I say this? I'll just give you an example. Personally, I started off my sales career in World Financial Group. I'm sure you've heard of World Financial Group.
I actually haven't, no.
Okay, good. You're not missing out on anything. But basically, it's just an insurance network marketing company.
Okay. Okay.
And much like Patrick Bet-David's PHP MLM style business model. And I got to a point where my ego was so inflated because I was a rising star. I was the youngest person like in Tennessee to reach like a certain promotion level within the organization, you know, got a few accolades and stuff like that. And it was cool. And I got to this point where my head was so full of information. I could explain concepts and stuff and really impress my prospects, but I wasn't persuading them. And I would walk into these rooms and I would hear these presentations and I would just be like feeling internally like I already know all this. And so it like there's no room with that attitude to grow. There's, you know, you're not teachable, you're not coachable at that point if you think you do know all of it. And I remember I reached a specific point where I was like, I got to stop feeling like this or operating like this and with this frame because it's preventing me from receiving new information.
Yeah. I literally was just writing, you know, ironically, an example of the point. I'm like, oh, you just taught me something that I actually hadn't thought about before. So I was writing it down.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Maybe when we join your program, I'll see it in there.
Yeah, you probably will. Yeah, when you used the word impress, I was like, that's such a key piece about mastering sales. If you're trying to impress onto someone, which means you're trying to put your opinions or, you know, say something that impresses onto the person, you're not going to be very good at sales. What you actually want to be doing is pulling out of people what matters to them. So when you just said the word impress, I was like, you know, when you're trying to impress something onto someone, it's like guaranteed that you're going to suck at sales.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. It definitely says a lot about what your motive and your intention, your focus is on the call. It's like, is it about you or is it about them?
Right. Your only job is to be able to articulate things in a way that pulls more out of the prospect. Yeah. Never, your job is never to put something into the prospect, put something into their mind. Never. Your job is to get them to tell you the things that matter to them. You know, it's like, that's why the whole meme of be a good listener is so important in sales, because it's not actually about listening. You know, people think, oh, I need to be really good at listening to things. What the fuck are you listening for? It's not, you know, you're not a musician. The whole reason why the analogy of like be a good listener is important is when you're perceived as a good listener, people do more talking. You're not actually getting better at listening. It's just by portraying that you're a good listener, you pull out of people more stuff. What actually matters is the ability to pull stuff out of people. And just by being a good listener, it makes people want to keep talking. Yeah.
It's like, yes, pulling out of them, but it's it's when it comes out of them, what is the result that is created by it like being pulled out of them? It's like confession, like, hey, I trust you with my problem. I'm admitting I have an issue that I need solved, and it creates this tension inside of them internally. Yeah.
Close. You know, when you said confession, I love that word as well. I mean, you know, who would be the best salespeople in the world? The fucking person that you sit in the box to and have to confess everything to. It's like, that's actually, I'm writing that one down as well. It's like a really, really good way to think of being a master salesperson is like to be able to get someone to confess everything. And so you're asking, why is that important? The reason that someone is not where they want to be is that the things that really matter, their next steps, the things that they need to be making decisions on, the actions they need to be taking, are buried so deep inside of the recesses of their mind and their psychology and their spirituality. And if they're right at the bottom of the well, they're not coming to fruition. They're not coming up for air. They're not breathing. They're not getting into the light. And so your job is to take those things from the bottom of their soul and bring them up to the top, because when they're now out there in the open and they're out there in the air, they're like, oh, this is now having room to breathe. So the reason that you have to do that is not so that they trust you as the closer, but so that they're now aware of those things that they were previously very unaware of. It's like if you do shadow work or if you do any type of deep psychotherapy, really what they're doing is pulling out of you things that are really, you know, unresolved, and they're right at the bottom of your psyche. That's kind of what you're doing on a sales call. You know, if someone doesn't have good leads, really what you're doing on a sales call is helping the person realize why they don't have good leads. And if the person really sat down with a pen and a piece of paper for 20 hours and wrote down everything they're doing, they would be able to figure it out on their own. But people don't do that. And so your job is to spend 20 minutes asking the right questions, which are like hooks, like when you go fishing, so that you can pull up the fish from the bottom of the ocean. And when you pull up the fish, it's like, oh, now I know what to eat. You know, it's like, that's all you're really doing on a sales call.
Damn. I love it, man. Especially, dude, with the analogies, man. You're as bad as me with the analogies. They're so good.
Yeah, you're quick with the analogies and finding something to connect it to.
Yeah, let me just put my computer on charge. One sec, guys.
You're good.
Yeah. Dude, time goes by so fast when we're on a podcast. I forgot.
Forgot what?
Like how quick it goes by. Like you know, this has been the quickest hour I've had in at least a couple of weeks because we haven't had any episodes because of the holidays and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, you already answered one of the other questions I was going to ask, which was, what is like the number one thing that your students fight with? And it's having confidence in themselves and not being afraid of their light. And so that was, we already talked about that, but kind of a progression on from that point is around the idea of, internal self-leadership. So I just wanted to talk about like self-mastery and the importance of what you do between your sales calls. You know, everybody talks about what to do on the call, but you have made it very clear what you do before and after the calls is equally as important, if not more important, than what you actually do on the sales call. So I want to talk about that with you for a little bit, because I know you've shared your six-figure monthly closer routine, waking up listening to Jim Rohn, that kind of stuff, and optimizing for peak state. So let's chat about that for a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
Is there a question, or do you want me to just chat in general?
Yeah, just riff on it, man.
So this comes from my journey of going from $1,500 a month to $100,000 a month. And there was really two things that took me from $1,500 a month to $100,000 a month. One was learning the actual scriptless selling, like how to ask the right questions. But even as I was learning that, what I realized was that along the way, every month, every 2 months, I would hit a rut. And the rut was nothing to do with what I was doing on the sales call. It was everything else that was going on in my life. And every single time I hit one of those ruts, I viewed myself as like a lab experiment. I was like, okay, how can I reverse engineer this rut? Like, why am I in this rut? What's going on? What's causing it? And then how can I put a plan in place so I don't get into this rut again? Because every single one of those ruts was costing me $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month. As I went up the ladder, it was more money that it was costing me each month. Because if I was making $70,000 a month and then I got into a 3-week rut where I wasn't closing, that's like $45,000 that you're losing in 3 weeks. So these are expensive ruts. So I went through the process of trying to reverse engineer all of these ruts. And I found that there was 8 specific ruts that you're going to get into. And so I created systems for myself that allowed me to never go into those ruts again, so long as I use the systems. So one of them was my emotions. If I came to a sales call and I was bringing my personal life into the sales call, my emotions would have a number of negative consequences on the call. I might not be able to get into rapport with the prospect because I'm just carrying this negative energy. I might not be able to think about what I need to be asking because my mind is elsewhere. I'm not concentrating. I'm not present. The prospect might be a little bit of a difficult prospect, and I get triggered because they're being a difficult prospect, not because they're a difficult prospect, but because my personal emotions were already wired up and I was already annoyed. And so emotions was a massive one. Second one was goal setting. Every single time I hit a record and I hit a goal, I would go into a rut because I just hit my goal. So it's like, oh, I don't really need to close anymore. Like I'm crushing it. I just bought the watch. I bought the whatever the thing was I was buying. And I realized, fuck, I need to have a system where I'm always aligned to a target that's in front of me. And so I reverse engineered that and found a way that I always had a target that was propelling me forward. Because if you're not motivated, if you're not driven, we spoke about one of the examples, when you're on the call of a prospect and you need to challenge them, if you're not that bothered about making more money because you've already accomplished the previous goal that you had, you're not going to challenge the prospect. Whereas, you know, one of my students now has a picture of a Porsche 911 on his desktop because that's his current goal. When he's on a call with a prospect and he knows he needs to challenge the prospect, he looks over here and he's like, I'm going to get the Porsche 911. I need to challenge the prospect. And so you have to have that reminder that it has a meaning, not just to the prospect, but also to you accomplishing what you want. Another one of those things was my habits. If I woke up and I didn't do a morning routine, or I went and just sat around lazing around, my energy started to go down. I didn't have as much general positive vibes. I know that sounds a bit woo-woo, but prospects can feel that. You know, prospects can feel when you're just a sloth that's taking your calls and then watching Netflix, and then taking your calls and then watching Netflix. They can feel that. So I realized I needed to choose the activities that I was doing between the day to fuel me, to give me energy, to give me drive. Another one was my health. Every time I got sick for like 3 days, I got the flu, my close rate went down. Now that wasn't as big as like a 3-week rut, but you know, if that happens every 4 weeks and you lose like 3 or 4 days, that's like 10% of your income. That's pretty significant. So I was like, I don't want to get sick anymore. I better take care of my health. And there's a number of other ones. I won't go through all of them, but each different one was costing me money. And I was able to reverse engineer why I got myself in that place and how to make sure I never got into that place again. I took all of that system and I created what's called the launch pad, which is the 8 different things that will prevent you getting into ruts because of internal issues. I then ended up training that to Alex Hormozi's old gym launch team, and along with some other things that took them to their highest close rates in over a year, because the internal is equally as important as the external.
Wow. Yeah. Taylor Welch has this concept of behavioral optimization.
Yep.
I worked for Taylor at one point, and I still see him a couple times a year. He lives in Nashville here, and I remember that was one of the things that I learned from him. Not as detailed as that. I really appreciate the fact that you were able to analyze what was happening, pattern analysis in your own life, internal reflection, and being able to draw a correlation between what was happening, like what was the input and what was the output, and then you created a system to strategically and systematically be able to eliminate those things. 100%. I know all of them were equally. I don't know if they were equally important, but they all played a role in mitigating the ruts, therefore increasing your income. Is there one that had the biggest impact more than others? I can imagine, like, if you're getting sick consistently, like just eliminating not getting sick would have a pretty measurable ROI. You know what I mean? Was there one that had a bigger impact than others?
Yeah, my emotions.
Okay.
My internal state, because, you know, not having a goal for a week or 2 weeks, you know, it's 25 to 50% of your monthly income. It's pretty significant. Getting sick for 3 or 4 days, that's 10% of your monthly income. Those matter, but your emotions can literally kill every single call that you're ever going to be on for the rest of your entire life. So, you know, if there's one thing that rules them all, it's you've got to get your emotions in check. You've got to get your state in check. Like, you know, every single day, every single call for an entire month, if you're in the wrong internal state, you won't close. So that's the biggest one by far, like significantly.
Yeah, the best closers I know, man, they're always having a great time. Like, they're always in a great mood. we're bringing one on right now, and he's like the happiest guy always ever. Like get on a call, and it's just consistently great energy.
Yep.
And he makes great commissions every month.
Yep.
You know, consistent 5-figure plus months selling what he sells. So, let's see here. It was this quote from one of the mentors that oddly enough, I had in World Financial Group. His name was Greg Kapp. And he had this saying that it was, your energy introduces you before you ever enter the room.
Oh, 100%.
That was one of my favorite quotes by him. I thought it was so good. He's like, clients can feel you vibrating before you even knock on their door. And it was insurance sales, obviously, you know, going to somebody's house. But same thing, before you even let them in the Zoom room.
If you actually read quantum physics, the rabbit hole is even more fucked up than that. And if you've heard of like Schrodinger's cat, it's like the prospect that opens the door, even though you're going to open the same door, is going to be a different prospect based on how you turned up. So like, it's not even the prospect opens the door and then they feel you and then they're like, oh, now I don't like him, I'm going to be in a bad mood. Like, you literally can manifest a different prospect to open the door. If you're walking, like if we're talking about door to door here, if you're walking around the neighborhood, like, and you're in a great energy, the people that open the door are going to be receptive of your energy. So like, I can literally control the quality of my leads by my energy that are going to turn up to my calendar that month. Like if I have shit energy, I'm just going to get shit leads. And then closers are like, oh, it's the marketing. It's like, yes, but no. Like, it's the marketing and you're probably in a shit state. So now you just got a bunch of bad leads. Now, the best place that you can see this, which I've done, is when you scale a sales team, because they're all getting the same leads. Yet one of them is closing at 60% and the other one's closing at 10%. And the one that's closing at 10% says it's the leads. Well, you're getting the same leads as the other guy, motherfucker. So you're manifesting bad leads, you know, and this goes back to what we're saying about you've got to realize you're more dumb than you think you are. If you've not read quantum physics, then you think you're way more intelligent than you really are. Because when you start reading quantum physics, fuck, the world is so fucked up. You have no idea as far as like, you know, two things can happen simultaneously. There's no such thing as the past, the present, and the future. Like, you know, quantum entanglement, like there's some fucked up shit. And if you actually want to be a master closer, you need to understand how that shit works, because your income is tied to all of those things all at the same time happening in the way that you need them to happen. So because I wanted to get rich, I went down that rabbit hole, and I'm very glad I did, because I figured things out that, you know, a lot of sales trainers, they ain't going down that rabbit hole. And, you know, that's fine. That's their choice. But you're going to make a lot more money if you understand how physics actually works at the quantum level.
Yep. Kevin, what's that quote?
This is something that I've been sharing with Joshua for, you know, we've been working together for about 2.5 years, but we started this company together a year ago. So I've been digging a lot deeper into this stuff with him since then. But yeah, I mean, one of the biggest impacts, it wasn't sales training, it wasn't sales coaching or anything like that. One of the biggest impacts on my level of success was learning quantum physics, and learning how the universe works at a microcosmic and macrocosmic level, and how to go with that flow instead of just being an idiot resisting it.
Yeah.
So what's that quote? It was about astrology. Millionaires don't think that astrology is real, but billionaires do, or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So
millionaires don't use astrology in their business. Billionaires do.
Yeah, apparently we just got out of that retrograde, which I was definitely feeling like some stuff was happening in the ethereal world.
Yeah.
Damn, man. I mean, there's some rabbit holes I would love to go down, but for the sake of time. So I want to touch on your unnamed mentor. You know, I just wanted tell us about like an impactful like paradigm shifting conversation that you may have had with as you like to call him. For those of you who don't know, Josh likes to talk about his unnamed mentor, and it's a big fucking secret, and I don't need to know, but it's because he won't tell anybody is why I want to know more information about this person. So as long as I can get at least one nugget from you, that'd be cool.
So the underground mentor taught me a lot of this quantum physics stuff and how everything's connected. One jumps to mind very, very clearly. I was in a sales rep and I got a message from him, and he said, "Clean your bathroom." And I thought, how the fuck does he know that my bathroom's dirty? Like, has he got a camera in my house or something? So I obviously asked him, I said, "How do you know that my bathroom's a mess?" And he said, "Because when you stop taking care of the little things, you're going to stop concentrating on the big things." And he obviously could see that my commission was going down, my close rate was going down. And it was just this paradigm shift for me to realize that, like, I'm walking around my house thinking that these things are not connected to these things, but they're all connected. Everything's connected. And the biggest thing that he taught me was this much broader perspective that everything connects. And it was just at the time getting that message, I was like looking over my shoulder, like, is someone watching me? Like, what's going on here? And it just made me realize that the underground mentor is not watching me. The universe is watching me. And the underground mentor understands how the universe works. In other words, if the universe can see that I'm not cleaning my bathroom, the universe is not going to send me good leads. Because if I'm not taking personal responsibility, I'm definitely not going to take the responsibility to be a leader to the leads that I'm on the phone with to help them get out of their comfort zone, make tough decisions, and fix their own problems. So that was one big example. Another example that was a big one was about a year and a half ago, my mum got cancer. And one of the big things that the underground mentor had taught me was about manifesting. And I taught my mum how to do the specific types of manifesting that he had taught me to do. And long story short, she did the manifesting that I told her to do. And she said she was sending me these voice notes, and she said, I'm manifesting that I get a phone call from the doctor, and the doctor tells me everything's cleared up, everything's fine. Fast forward, she literally sends me an audio crying saying, I got the phone call from the doctor and it was exactly how I had manifested it was going to sound. He said the same words in the same way. It was identical. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I think salespeople need to take their profession more seriously is it's not just about sales. If you use sales to become the best version of yourself, you're able to do things for the people that you love, the people you care about, your children, your significant other, your best friends, that you will never be able to uncover without going on a journey of becoming the best version of yourself. It's not just about closing deals and making commission. It's the internal transformation that you go through when you figure out how to have the right beliefs, you figure out how the universe works, you figure out how to manage your emotions, you figure out how to design your environment to be uplifting, etc., etc. You're able to have such a profound positive impact on a much broader playing field than just the prospects' lives that you're changing day to day. And so most salespeople will never get to experience the beauty of that because they just view sales as a 9-to-5. And if that's all they view it as, it will just be a 9-to-5. But for me, it was a pursuit of mastery. And in that pursuit of mastery, I was able to do things like helping my mom cure cancer from the things that I'd learned on that pursuit of mastery.
Yep.
Dude, that's crazy, Kevin. You had a similar story. I was like, that's wild.
Yeah. This is something that, like I said, I'm since like 2015 when I went on this journey of truth and discovery, and what ultimately led me to a mentor the 33rd degree Rosicrucian, like knighted. He was a NASA aerospace engineer, so he had like the esoteric and the and the scientific background, and it just made it so understandable from a holistic and scientific perspective by blending it in together. And one of the most impactful things that he said to me, and still I think about, and I mention to anybody that I think it can benefit, is be careful what you believe, right? Because what you believe you receive. So you have to be very guarded with your beliefs and continue to adjust them, right? Like something I tell Joshua all the time. I'm like, man, I don't know anything about anything, but unless let's put it this way: if I have a belief for all of my life, and then new information presents itself today, that is no longer a belief of mine. Now I'm a completely different person for the rest of my life, and it's so important to be that malleable, right?
Yeah.
But with regard to only growth, not just being, openly malleable. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, and this is kind of like off in a different direction, but something that I did want to ask that came up earlier is, there's so many similarities between the things that you talk about when it comes to a sales call, and we were talking about the extraction rather than the impression. But how does that apply to coaching your students, right? Because with them, you're trying to pull things out of them, but you are teaching them things, right? So like how, what we tend to, I feel like with our clients, we're not coaches, not anymore. Like we're not in the coaching industry anymore. So, but I feel like when we do have like coachable moments with our client, I feel like we almost like shy away from it. Like, I don't want to get into this with them. Like, you know what I mean? So how do you like navigate the difference between teaching your students and extracting the things out of them that you need to, I guess is the question, right?
I try as often as I can to not teach and to try and extract, because if you really want to transform someone, it has to come from within them. The more you try and tell people, the more they'll resist it, the more they'll just fight it. And so I'm always trying to find a way to question them so that they realize they actually know the answer. And people always do. They always know the answer. So I think a lot of it, when we shy away from that, comes from impatience. You have to have much more patience to coach someone than you do to teach someone. To just tell someone, hey, this is the way to do it, you don't need to have any patience. But if we look at something like the levels of consciousness, peace, love, joy at the very top of the scale, that is coming from patience, coming from care.
The chart that I just sent you last night, Joshua.
Coming from, a place of actually wanting the best for someone. And if you really want the best for them, you have to drop the ego and just be willing to take the time to coach someone.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so I guess it's more of a conscious decision to resist the urge to teach. That's exactly what we learned from Josh Forty, was like, how do you run a great webinar? What do you not do? Teach. That's what Dan Henry told him. And so even with clients or prospects, it's like, how do I say less? How do I teach less? And how do I extract more and ask better questions? And so I think it comes back to also the thing you said that you had to unlearn the most, which was how intelligent you are, and giving information and stuff like that. That it's like a battle of the ego, resisting teaching, resisting succumbing to the temptation to teach, rather than understanding that if I just extract what I need from this person, it'll have a greater impact on them. And I think, Kevin, honestly, that's just a skill set that we need to dial in a little bit better with our clients, because, oh boy.
I think one of the last things that we need more of in the world is teaching. we have enough fucking teaching on YouTube, and everybody's a fucking coach these days, and they're teaching this and teaching that and teaching their methodology. What we need more of is transformation, actually changing people. You used a great example, which I'm going through at the moment with my business, is webinars. What actually creates more sales, which is transformation? If someone buys a program, they're making a new decision than what they've made before. Webinars. What do we have a fuck ton of right now? Short form content, which is teaching people stuff. People just watch more and more and more and more and more free education and don't change anything in their life. They just sit there and watch educational videos. It's like what we actually need is more webinars, like 60-second webinars, because you watch a webinar, you buy a program, you do the program, and your life changes. But the irony is this whole, I probably shouldn't shit on anyone here, but I'm going to anyway. I think Hormozi fucked this up. Like Hormozi, I think, is the number one biggest person that has fucked this up because he had such massive reach and he told everybody to just teach for free. So now everybody is producing free educational content and nobody's buying shit and actually doing the work and doing the transformation. They're just watching free training on YouTube. How many people are watching 16 hours worth of free training and then actually changing their life? None of them. They're just watching the training and doing nothing. So you need more webinars, but it's like, I don't know how Hormozi fucked this up, but like this whole idea of just give away all your free shit and train people and give them all stuff. It's like, we've known for millennium, if you give people free, unsolicited advice that they didn't pay for, they won't execute it. They will not take action on it. But the whole meme now is like, just give all of your shit away and train people for free. It's actually doing a disservice to the population because they are not going to do anything with the information. When you withhold the information in a webinar until someone has to buy, then they do the work with the information. So it's like this, and this kind of goes back, we can tie it back to sales, that like, if you try and cut corners, you will lose something. If you try and cut the corner of commitment before education, you lose the implementation of the education. What you need before you educate people is commitment, which means give me your credit card and commit energetically and financially and psychologically that you're going to do the work that I'm going to tell you to do. But on YouTube, it's like, you don't have to have any commitment. I'll just give you the information. Nobody does anything with it. They just sit there and watch business videos and think. And this is where it gets really murky, is like, well, I'm doing the right thing because I'm not watching a Netflix TV series. I'm watching educational content on YouTube. It's like, no. There's no difference. You may as well go and watch Batman the animated series instead of watching YouTube and not doing anything with the information. You may as well just be like, which is more of a lie? I'm learning but not implementing, or just being honest and say, I'm just watching entertainment. At least you're being fucking honest with yourself. Yeah. Whereas like lying to yourself, telling yourself you're educating yourself, nothing changed in your life. You just watched some free videos on YouTube on how to run a business and didn't change anything in your business. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah. Anyway, in their mind, it's almost like the lesser of two evils. But it's
so that's like, dude. Yes, remember yesterday, Josh? You were like, our offer is $25K, right? And we had this one prospect that he's not the best fit, whatever the case may be, right? And he kept on jumping into Joshua's DM, like, can I just like pay you like $1,000 for your sales training and all this stuff? I'm like, do what you want, but I'm not dealing with that person in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know if you gave him the discount or not, but I'm like, dude, you're doing him a disservice, and that's how I view it too. Like, we have one offer, it's $25K, and that's transformative, right? In a 90-day time frame, you're going to have a different result than the way that you come to us. And anything less than that is, I'm not going to waste my time or your time, because it's not going to get you the result that you want.
Yeah, it's just more mental masturbation.
Yep.
I mean,
and then, how do all of those people turn out, right? 6 months from now, they're in the same spot they were in. And then they're back on a sales call with us. And we're like, okay, yeah, we talked about this 6 months ago. We want to start now.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And, it's also interesting. There's this concept about if I tell you what I'm going to do, like if I say I got a New Year's resolution, I hate resolutors, by the way. But if I got this resolution and I'm going to do this, then psychologically, and I feel the words come out of my mouth, my brain is tricked into thinking that was the payoff, like the actual thing. It provides the same kind of dopamine hit in your brain, and it ultimately robs you of the reward of doing the thing. And so, like, I'm trying it whenever, personally, even if I say I'm going to do something, whether it be a bad habit I need to stop, something I need to start doing, I try intentionally not to talk about it, to tell anybody about it. And it's like the same thing happens whenever you do give somebody information. Like you said, Josh, that could be, it's the same thing as watching Batman. Like, you're robbing the potentiality of it happening from them.
Yep.
And so it's actually more of a disservice to them.
Yeah. I only watch the free content of the people I intend on buying into their program. If that's it, that's my content consumption.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I follow 70 people on Instagram, and they're very, very strategic about who I follow and consume from. And maybe it should be less than that. But I love talking about that, and that's a super good point. But it's interesting though, what Hormozy did do was make a bunch of freebie chasers. And there's definitely a lot more. And now, Kevin, I understand where you're coming from and about strategically not putting things out there or doing things that attract those people into our ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks. This has been a week-long debate. I'm glad we finally made it over the hump.
That's so funny.
Love it. Well, I mean, Josh, to give you some kind of context on where this debate came from, we're AI employee community experts for GHL, right? So we're like one of 4 companies that work directly with GHL and their entire community to help with the implementation of the launch of their new AI employee products, right? And so, we created this free GHL community, and then you can ascend into our paid community. And I don't want to be a community manager. I know how to get leads. I don't want to have to do all the things that come along with community management. So I'm very rigid about, because he wants to throw all kinds of content in there, and we have this conversation. And ultimately, I'm like, dude, we need to be very mindful of how we nurture people through our process, right? Because, if we're giving away all this stuff for free, they're not going to implement it. We're attracting the wrong people, and then the ascension is broken. And then the whole purpose of what we're doing is useless, right? Because it's not the right people. It's not the right, frame or, energy that we want them to carry through the ascension process to get to where they're going to be a qualified person to work with us if they're not already, right?
The best example I can give, and I'm making so many notes as we're having this conversation, is I know how to get the highest close rate on a sales call in regards to how you pitch. If in your pitch you actually start training the prospect and you tell them exactly how you're going to do everything, they will not buy. They will give you a think about it objection. If you keep everything really vague, and like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, which is going to do this, 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 and then you're going to have this life, they're more likely to buy. And so, like, it's the paradigm of, like, if I actually try and educate my prospect in my pitch, thinking that logically makes sense, they're not going to buy. Your pitch should
which
be
is also why, Joshua, which is also why I shut down that educational VSL that you wanted to put pre-call.
Yeah.
Exact same reason. Thank you.
It's so
you're
crazy.
helping me a lot in my business today, Josh.
You're welcome. Well, these are fundamental principles, whether it's webinars, running a business, content, sales, because all of those things are based on human psychology. And human psychology is not the more information I give someone, the more action they're going to take. No. The more I can get people fired up into a place of commitment, the more action they will take. You used the example, Joshua, of webinars. It's like, really, all a webinar is doing is telling you how bad your current life is, telling you how good your life could be, and then giving you like 3 milestones of where you fucked up. It doesn't tell you how to fix the things that you fucked up. It just makes your current situation seem so fucking bad you don't want to stay there. Your future potential seems so good that you want to get there. And then 3 things that you're like, oh, if I switch that, and that, I'll go from here to here. But it doesn't tell you how to do that, because the more you give people that information, the more they just don't do anything. It's like the irony.
Fucking fire.
It's
That's
just
such good advice.
Desire in change and certainty in your solution that's going to get them the result that they're looking for.
Yep.
That's so good.
You used Napoleon Hill before. It's like a burning desire is like the biggest thing that you need to give people to get them to buy, not a plethora of information. People don't buy from having a Rolodex of information. They buy from having a burning desire. And that burning desire comes from the gap of where they are and where they could be, plus the clarity of like, oh, these are the 3 things that I'm missing. Like, that's so obvious. Those are the 3 places I fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is live exorcism of all the shit that I need to unlearn. Because I'm very much like you. I'm a young guy relatively. I'm finally past the first quarter of my life. I plan on living to at least 100, God willing. And I feel that this has been the biggest year of learning for me, and specifically, a lot of it has just been unlearning shitty ways of selling that I have learned up until this point. And man, the irony is that I was trying ultimately far too hard up until this point. Too many details, too much information, and now it's just like, wow, I get to do so much less and just go much deeper.
Yeah.
And so like it's so backwards in my mind, but I'm learning to accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a couple more questions for you, man, before we wrap up. This has been, I can already tell you, one of my favorite podcast episodes. So this has been awesome. And the quote is that money is only everything to somebody who doesn't have it. And the question is, how do you maintain a level of fulfillment after finances and getting out of the struggle are no longer a concern?
I don't agree with the quote, man. Like, I get it that needing or wanting money when your life sucks is certainly a pretty strong desire. But dude, the more money you have, the more you're like, you know what? I want that thing that I can't have, and that thing that's even more expensive, and that thing that's even more expensive than that thing. So no, like I just fundamentally don't agree with the quote. I think it's where so many people go wrong is they just don't know what they don't know about having more money. It's like, man, money is hella fun. Like having money and doing cool shit and bringing your friends with you and driving Ferraris and flying on jets and living in villas and, paying for the best surfing coach to teach you surfing. Like whatever you want, like having money is just so much fun. So, yeah, I think people don't dream big enough when it comes to needing to get richer. They're like, oh, I don't really need to fly private jets. Like, have you flown private jet? No. All right, try it, and then tell me after that you want to go back going through fucking TSA. Hell no, you don't want to be going through TSA in an airport after you've flown on a private jet.
Yeah, you're spoiled at that point.
Turn up to the airport, take a chauffeured car to literally the stairs to your jet. Like they wave the little magic wand over your backpack and it's like, all right, security done. You're like, fuck, that's so much better. I don't have to stand in a queue with obese people sweating on me and, standing there like a moron. Like, no, like life is so much better when you have more money. And the more money you have, the more better it gets.
Well then, to reframe my question then, because the question is ultimately fulfillment outside of money, and you gave a great answer, which was, generally speaking, most people don't dream big enough. They don't have, they get what they think, like they're basic, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? They satisfy a degree of needs in their life, and then they think that it's just done. It's like the equivalent of a Christian thinking that I said a prayer and I accepted Jesus into my heart, and now I'm just free of, ever not going to hell. If example there, you know what I mean? And so it's like once I have my, my basic needs met, well, then I can stop dreaming. And even like, I would submit a lot of people are, it's like, don't want too much out of life. They're programmed to be modest, especially like my dad's a pastor and I grew up in a preacher's family, and a lot of the lofty goals and wanting more out of life wasn't frowned upon, but it wasn't encouraged necessarily. It was like more like just live within your means and don't dream. You know what I mean? But the question, because I'm still curious, what have you found fulfillment in besides the pursuit of dreams and finances and making more money?
I think they're the same thing, because
okay,
like the name of the podcast, Entrepreneurship Sucks, is like, it's not so much flying on the private jet that is so fulfilling. It's, holy shit, I made this happen for myself. Like, I did the work that allowed me to do this, and now I'm able to fly in luxury. It's like, I think where people go down the rabbit hole of these types of metaphysical questions, like, well, what should be fulfilling, money or fucking Zen Buddhism? It's like they go down these rabbit holes of questions because they have the philosophy of like, well, if you just won the lottery, well, motherfucker, you're not going to just win the lottery. Like, if you want to live this materialistic, nice life, you have to go on a personal transformational journey. Therefore, they happen together unless you're going to win the lottery. It reminds me of the quote that Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say back when he was like pro bodybuilder in the 70s and 80s, 70s really. People used to come up to him and say, oh, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to look like you. And he was like, you never will. And it's like that type of response of like, thinking that you don't want to lift weights because you don't want to look like me, like, motherfucker, you're never going to look like me anyway. So it's like,
I love it. Yeah.
I don't want to get so rich because then I'm not going to have fulfillment. Well, how do you plan on getting rich other than winning the lottery, unless it's by going on a personal pilgrimage of becoming the ultimate version of yourself? You're not going to get rich. So it's like, does that make sense? Like, the whole mindset is screwed up by people because they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to come into money. And then I'm going to be having this like, Freudian slip where I'm like, oh my God, I have no fulfillment in life. I'm so rich, but I have no fulfillment. It's like, you're not going to arrive at that destination. It's not going to happen. You're only going to arrive at the place where you're so rich that you can't figure out what to do with the money, when you've become such a competent version of yourself that you're not going to end up in metaphysical hell where you're like, I don't know what to do with my life. It kind of ties into the whole Andrew Tate philosophy of like, you're only going to get that level of accomplishment if you really do everything right in your life and you try your absolute best. You put your life in order, you give it your all. And it's one of the things I like about his message is like, it's not, hey, go and buy a bunch of lottery tickets and see if you win the lottery. It's try and become the very best version of yourself and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So the fulfillment comes in the pursuit of getting rich.
Yeah. And like, it goes back to what we were talking about before about people being overly intellectualized. Like, they sit there with a notebook and a journal, like, whilst they're in their mum's basement and broke, they're like, what am I going to do when I'm really rich? And yet I feel empty inside and I have no fulfillment. It's like, motherfucker, why are you writing fucking, Nietzsche? Like, you're not, some Eastern European philosopher. You're broke. Like, how about you just try and fix not being broke instead of sitting there philosophizing over how to not have a what do they call it? Like a psychological crisis. You're not going to have a psychological crisis, but they sit, because again, it's easier to sit there over intellectualizing, thinking how intelligent you are. Like, and these are the type of idiots that sit there thinking, oh my God, I'm so intelligent that I've figured out how to not arrive at a destination when I'm so rich and yet I'm so unhappy. It's like, no. You're not intelligent because you've figured out how to not make any progress in life. Like, that's not intelligence. They put themselves into their own corner of apathetic lack of action, and they call it being a philosopher and being overly intellectual. It's like, no, you're just stupid as fuck because you're just not doing anything with your life.
I love it, man. And this is a widely debated question. So this is going to make for some good clips for sure.
It's funny because the last question we had for you is, and I think we might have just found it. We might not even have to ask, but if you had one quote, like a legacy quote that survived you after you were gone, what would it be? But I think you just gave it to us.
Yeah, you rip something from that last riff. Sure,
I think it should be pussies don't get rich.
Yeah, philosophers don't get rich. Yeah,
that's good. Good.
Yeah.
All right, man. I think that's the at least the end of the questions that we prepared for.
Dude, this has been awesome. I got perfect timing too. So how do people, so this is what I want to make sure that we cover. How do people connect with you? We're going to put all your everything that you shared with us, the links and everything. But what do you recommend for people who want to dig deeper into the things that you have talked about here today, and get into your program? Like, let us know, who's a good fit, who's not, and all that good stuff.
So I think, going back to what we were saying about training versus commitment, if someone is listening and they're like, you know what, I truly do want to become the best version of myself. I'm in sales and I want to use that career as a vehicle to see what I'm really capable of. And they're looking around their life and thinking, you know what, I do want to drive supercars. I do want to travel business class, first class on a private jet. I do want to stay in swanky villas. I do want to retire my parents. Whatever it is that you want, if you realize, and you've come to that realization now, that it all comes down to getting richer, and in order to get richer, you have to become a better version of yourself. If you're in sales and you've now come to that realization and you want me and my underground mentor to mentor you, then it would be a privilege. You can go to the website, which is www.unicorncloser.com, www.unicorncloser.com, or you can go and check out my Instagram, which is joshlyons.sales, joshlyons.sales. But ultimately, even though I put out a lot of free content, you are not going to get rich and you are not going to become the best version of yourself just by watching free content. You have to actually go on a journey of mastery. You can do that on your own, or you can do that with a mentor. I did it with a mentor, and so I'm biased to say I don't think I'd be sitting here on this podcast where I am today, living the life that I am today, if I didn't choose to get a mentor. And I've still got that same mentor today, 4.5 years later. So if you want a mentor, I'd be honored to train you, to mentor you, to become better at sales by becoming a better version of yourself and help you live the life of your dreams.
Love it. Yeah. I like what you said about the free content. Again, it's like, it's he who seeks shall find, not he who watches shall find.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. One of my favorite poems is, The Man in the Arena. Have you heard that poem before? It's like, if you're just sat there being the spectator, you're not on the field, you're not running the ball, you are not going to be the one experiencing the glory of getting the touchdown. You can't spectate your way to success. You can't spectate your way to glory. You have to get in the arena. You have to get on the field.
Love it. Well,
Thank
Josh,
you. Thank
this
you
has
for that.
been amazing. We appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
You know, we're gonna cut it here. We're right about time. We'll hang back for a couple minutes and chat. But thanks, everybody.
Until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.